Finding faith, and today, of course, Good Friday, when Christians around the world mark the crucifixion and death of Jesus.
And this Easter, officials say once again the fragile cloth will not be put on display.
For more than 800 years, the Shroud of Turin has baffled believers and skeptics alike. Countless studies tried to solve its mystery, yet none could explain it. But now, artificial intelligence has uncovered something no scientist can explain. Anomalies so unsettling, they could rewrite history itself. This is the story of what AI just found in the Shroud of Turin. Before we go into details of what artificial intelligence uncovered, we need to look at the Shroud of Turin itself and why people have been amazed and curious about it for over 800 years. The cloth the world can't explain. The Shroud of Turin is one of the most controversial relics in history. Some call it sacred, while others call it a clever forgery. However, it has drawn attention from all over the world. People travel long distances to see it, and scientists study it closely, trying to understand its secrets. At first, it looks like an ordinary plain linen sheet, about 14 feet long and 3.5 feet wide. But if you look closer, something unsettling appears. Faintly, you can see the image of a man on the front and back. His hands and feet show marks like wounds. A crown of thorns seems pressed into his head, and there is a deep cut along his side. The shroud silently tells a story of pain, loss, and mystery. Of course, to many believers, this cannot be just an ordinary cloth. They see it as the burial shroud of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, miraculously preserved through wars, fires, and centuries of doubt. But critics are not convinced. They believe it could be a smart creation from the Middle Ages, so realistic that no one has been able to fully explain it. But no matter what you believe, the shroud has a power that draws people in, making them pause and wonder. The shroud first appeared in a small French village called Liray in 1345. A local knight, Geoffroy de Charny, displayed it in a new church, and people came from far, wide, and near to see it. How he got the cloth remains a mystery. Some say it was a family heirloom. Others believe he brought it from his travels, and no one knows for sure where the shroud was before 1345. If it really covered Jesus' body, why did it disappear for over 1,000 years? Some historians think it might have been secretly moved from Jerusalem to Constantinople, hidden during wars and looting, before finally showing up in France. Others believe it was made in the Middle Ages to inspire wonder and devotion. Its origin is a mystery, and that uncertainty has only made the shroud more intriguing over the years. Whatever the truth, people believed they were standing before something sacred. Its fame spread quickly, drawing pilgrims with offerings, and each visitor only deepened the shroud's mystery. Soon, it became the center of debate, and by 1389, some church officials began questioning its legitimacy. But despite the doubts, people kept coming. If anything, the controversy only made the cloth more famous. However, the shroud's journey didn't end in France. In 1453, Margaret de Charny, Geoffroy's granddaughter, gave it to the powerful House of Savoy. The family treasured it, moving it carefully between chapels and palaces until it finally found a permanent home in Turin. By then, its reputation had spread across Europe, capturing the attention of kings, queens, and ordinary people alike. The cloth had become more than a relic. It was a symbol of mystery, devotion, and fascination. In 1532, a fire broke out in the chapel where the shroud was kept. Flames scorched parts of the linen, leaving triangular burn marks that are still visible today. The cloth narrowly escaped destruction. Nuns carefully stitched the damaged areas to preserve what remained. Those burns became a permanent part of the shroud, and centuries later, they would even influence debates about its age and authenticity. For hundreds of years, people have been both drawn to and puzzled by the shroud. The Catholic Church allowed it to be shown, but rarely explained what it really was. For many, seeing it became a personal moment of faith, Some claimed they could make out the face of Christ in the faint lines, while others saw only marks and stains. But everyone agreed on one thing: how the image was formed remains a mystery. To some, it may be just linen, but to others, it has been a source of hope, healing, and wonder. Miracles and mystery. The shroud's unseen power. Beyond arguments about whether the shroud is real or fake, it has also been linked to healing, protection, and miraculous events over the years. These stories give it a supernatural side that science cannot fully explain to this day. One of the most famous stories comes from 1954 in Gloucestershire, England. An 11-year-old girl named Josie Wallum was very sick. Doctors had given up hope and even performed the last rites. Josie believed she could be healed if she could see the shroud. Her mother contacted Group Captain Leonard Cheshire, a retired Royal Air Force officer who was speaking about the shroud nearby. Touched by her faith, Cheshire sent Josie a photograph of the shroud's face. According to her, she held the photograph close, and something miraculous happened. She began to feel better. 2 weeks later, she was discharged from the hospital. She still could not walk, but she insisted she needed to touch the actual shroud to be completely healed. Cheshire arranged for her to travel to Turin, where she gently placed her hand on the rolled-up cloth. Witnesses said she was healed. Years later, Josie returned to Turin, walking on her own. She married and had a child, and her story became one of the most talked-about modern healings connected to the shroud. However, long before Josie, rumors of the shroud's extraordinary influence date back many centuries. In the year 544, the city of Edessa was under siege by the Persian army. According to tradition, the shroud was displayed above the city walls. Remarkably, the Persian forces reportedly retreated without attacking. People at the time saw this as a sign of divine protection, and the cloth was treated as a sacred shield. Some accounts even mention King Abgar V of Edessa, who was very ill but recovered after gazing at the image. Also, in the year 944, the shroud was being carried to Constantinople. During this procession, a man believed to be possessed by an evil spirit touched the cloth. According to the records of the time, he was instantly freed from his condition. Chroniclers described it as a miraculous healing, and the story quickly spread. By then, the shroud was already gaining a reputation not just as a relic, but as something that seemed to hold a strange and powerful influence over people who came near it. Then there is the miracle of the flowers, a story that has been told for centuries near Turin. In 1336, a young pregnant woman named Egidia Mathis was walking home when two mercenaries tried to stop her. Frightened, she ran to a roadside pillar with a fresco of the Virgin Mary and prayed. Witnesses said a light shone from the image. The attackers fled, and she gave birth immediately. Nearby blackthorn bushes, frozen in winter, suddenly burst into bloom. Since then, people say the bushes have bloomed every year around Christmas and early January, with only a few exceptions during the World Wars. While this is not directly about the shroud, this event became linked to it, adding to the belief that the cloth is surrounded by extraordinary events. However, none of these events has been officially declared a miracle by the Church. Still, many believers see them as signs of divine intervention, while others consider them historic tales that have been passed down through generations. And as expected, some people have questioned these claims and doubted the shroud's authenticity. But the bigger question remains, can faith endure these doubts? Or does controversy have the power to shake one of history's most famous relics? Doubt and devotion. The shroud's first scandal. The first criticism of the shroud didn't come from outsiders, but from within the church itself. Some leaders wondered if it was truly holy, and a few spoke out boldly, challenging what many accepted without question. At a time when people rarely questioned relics, speaking out against them was both uncommon and risky. One of the earliest critics was Nicole Oresme, a respected scholar, philosopher, and bishop in the late 13th century. He had made a name for himself in mathematics, astronomy, and theology. He also served as Bishop of Lisieux under King Charles V. Despite his position, he said the shroud was made by humans, not a miracle. He believed that faith should also respect reason and evidence. His view was bold at a time when relics were usually accepted without question and used to inspire devotion or raise money. Oresme's stance surprised many believers because most people at the time saw relics as sacred and beyond question. But he made it clear he was not against faith, he was only against deception. He warned that people should not be misled by something made by human hands. He specifically pointed to the shrine in Lire, Champagne, accusing the church officials there of presenting the shroud as holy when, in his view, it was clearly a fake meant to trick believers and collect offerings. Oresme did not back down from his beliefs. He did not rely on feelings or rumors. Instead, he carefully examined witnesses and questioned how reliable their claims were. He reminded people that just because respected clergy said something was a miracle, it did not make it true. His way of thinking was new for his era, and it laid the groundwork for centuries of criticism. Today, his writings are seen as the earliest formal rejection of the shroud's authenticity. However, Oresme was not alone. In 1389, Bishop Pierre d'Arcis of Troyes wrote a letter to Pope Clement VII. He claimed the shroud had been painted to deceive believers and extort money from them. He said his predecessor had investigated the cloth and confirmed it was a fake. He even claimed the artist had admitted to creating it, though the name was never revealed. If true, the shroud was less a holy relic and more a clever way to raise funds. As a high-ranking church official, his letter went straight to the Pope. He argued that the shroud was being used to trick pilgrims with false claims of holiness. According to him, the clergy in Lire staged these healings and miracles to collect donations and gain prestige, just as Oresme had suspected. He described the image as cleverly painted and warned that the church's reputation could be damaged if it continued to present it as real. At this point, many people could not help but believe d'Arcis. In those times, relics were powerful. They could bring wealth and status to a church. Pilgrims would visit and give offerings, and the church's reputation would grow. To him, the shroud was less about faith and more about money, and he wanted the deception to end. But despite these criticisms, the church never officially said the shroud was fake. Pope Clement VII allowed it to be displayed, but only as a representation of Christ's burial cloth, not the real one. This compromise avoided taking a direct stance on its authenticity while keeping the relic on display. As a result, believers and skeptics could maintain their beliefs, and public interest continued to grow. People continued to pray before the shroud. Whether it was real or not, they stayed devoted to their beliefs. The criticism did not make it less appealing. Instead, it made it more intriguing. The mix of faith and doubt drew people in, and everyone wanted to see it for themselves and decide what to believe. This mix of faith and doubt shaped the shroud for centuries. Instead of weakening it, the debates made it more fascinating. The relic drew attention, devotion, and curiosity. Criticism gave it more visibility that would be felt in cathedrals, courts, and classrooms, enabling everyone who saw it to think carefully about what they were seeing. By the time the shroud reached Turin, its story had become legendary. Pilgrims traveled from far and near, drawn by the faint image of a man, stories of miracles, and lingering questions. And while the church never confirmed its authenticity, it never denied the mystery. That silence may be the most powerful statement of all. The beliefs, debates, and observations of past centuries gave us the foundation for what we know about the shroud. But earlier scientists could only study what they could see or feel. Today, new generations with modern technologies are discovering details that were once elusive in the past. What if the shroud still holds secrets, hidden in its fibers, waiting for technology capable of revealing them? How AI is challenging history and faith. Today, uncovering the shroud's deepest secrets no longer depends just on human eyes or hands. It requires tools that can reveal what has been hidden for centuries. For hundreds of years, the Shroud of Turin refused to give away its secret, and no one could prove whether it was real or fake. But in the 20th century, everything began to shift. Advances in science gave people the ability to examine, measure, and test the cloth in ways that were never possible before. The shroud was no longer just a symbol to believe in or dismiss. It became a puzzle to explore, a mystery that might finally give up its secrets. For the first time in years, humans could approach it directly and perhaps uncover the truth. In 1988, scientists finally had the chance to put the shroud to the test. With the Vatican's cautious approval, tiny samples not bigger than a postage stamp were carefully cut from one corner. These fragments were sent to 3 laboratories in Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona for radiocarbon dating, to measure the age of the linen and, perhaps for the first time, get a definitive answer about when the shroud was made. When the results came back, the world was stunned. All 3 labs concluded that the shroud dated between the years 1260 and 1390, placing it squarely in the medieval period, a time long after Jesus. If true, it was not the burial cloth of Jesus, but a clever medieval artifact. For critics, this felt like vindication, and for a moment, it seemed science had finally answered the questions on everyone's mind, and finally, the mystery was solved. But many did not agree with the result. Some scientists pointed out that the samples were taken from the very edges of the cloth, areas that had been handled and repaired over the centuries, especially after the fire in 1532. Some textile experts even found cotton fibers in the tested sections, and small differences in the weave suggested repairs. If that were the case, the carbon tests might have measured newer patches rather than the original fabric, keeping the shroud's true age uncertain. Meanwhile, many believers rejected the carbon dating results completely. To them, the shroud remained a sacred relic, and their faith stayed strong, no matter what science claimed. Beyond carbon dating, the shroud holds even more mysteries. Its bloodstains have been confirmed as real human blood, type AB, which is found in less than 5% of people today. The marks on the wrists, feet, side, and head match wounds from crucifixion, including a crown of thorns, and some tests even detected bilirubin, a substance linked to severe trauma. Studies of pollen grains show traces of plants that grow in Jerusalem, including a thorny spring-blooming species that might have been part of the crown. These small but striking details suggest the shroud may indeed have traveled through the Middle East, adding layers to its long and mysterious story. Looking closer at the cloth itself reveals more mystery. The herringbone twill pattern is unusual, yet it matches fabrics from ancient times, like those found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. The linen was hand-spun and hand-woven, just as people did in the 1st century. The cloth is remarkable on its own, but the image it holds is even more striking. At first, it looks faint, but under proper lighting or in photographs, a man appears. He has long hair, a beard, and wounds that match those from scourging and crucifixion. His head shows marks that suggest a crown of thorn. Every small detail aligns with the descriptions of crucifixion found in ancient texts. The shroud's image looks like a photographic negative, meaning the light and dark parts are reversed, just like in old film photos. When Secondo Pia photographed it in 1898, he noticed that the face and body details became much clearer in the negative than when you look at the shroud with your eyes. But here's the kicker: photography did not exist in medieval times. That means if the shroud was really made in the Middle Ages, no one at that time could have known how to create an image that behaves like a photographic negative. Some scientists suggest the image could have formed from a sudden burst of energy, maybe something like radiation. Others see it as a mark of a divine moment, imagining the power of resurrection leaving its trace. Critics argued they are medieval tricks, but none of these explanations can match the tiny details or the three-dimensional depth captured in the image. The shroud also holds three-dimensional information. Scans show that the light and dark areas match the shape of the body, almost like a map of its depth. Using this, computers can create a sculpture-like model of the figure. No artist, medieval or modern, could have made something like this. If it is a fake, it is beyond any skill humans have ever known. If it is real, it might be the only object on Earth to capture an image formed by an unknown force. Either way, the shroud remains a mystery that has no clear answer. Can a mystery that has lasted for centuries withstand modern scrutiny? When AI examined the shroud, it revealed more details that challenge both faith and reason. Every year, new efforts to unravel the shroud's mystery brew new confusion. In 2022, Italian researchers led by Dr. Liberato De Caro used a technique called wide-angle X-ray scattering, which measures how linen fibers change over time instead of relying on carbon dating. Their results suggested the shroud could be around 2,000 years old, placing it in the era of Jesus. It was not definitive proof, but it reignited the debate. The scientific community remains divided. Some say the method is too new to challenge the 1988 carbon tests, while others argue that the cloth's long and complex history makes precise dating nearly impossible. Either way, the shroud remains a battleground between faith and science. After centuries of speculation, uncertainty, and endless debate, artificial intelligence is finally revealing surprising details. Using high-resolution scans and ultraviolet imaging, scientists studied the shroud with a machine learning system built to detect patterns invisible to the human eye. This was no casual test. It was a full-scale forensic study using tools that didn't exist even 10 years ago. The goal was simple: let the machine look at the cloth without bias, belief, or assumptions that have clouded human judgment for centuries. The AI also confirmed what photographers had noticed over a century ago. The image acts like a photographic negative, but it revealed something even more remarkable. The darkness or lightness of each part of the image corresponds to the distance between the cloth and the body. This means the shroud is not just a flat picture. It actually captures three-dimensional details of the body it covers. The closer the cloth was to the skin, the darker the imprint. In other words, the shroud holds real spatial information, almost like a biometric scan, making it far more complex than anything a medieval artist could have painted. This depth information is not just a visual trick. It can be measured. The AI mapped the intensity of each part of the image and found it matched the shapes of the nose, cheeks, brow, and other features, while recessed areas like the eye sockets and neck are lighter. This kind of spatial correlation is unheard of in ancient art. Paintings do not behave this way. Modern imaging systems do. And yet, the shroud predates photography by centuries. The implication is astonishing. The image was formed in a way that recorded depth without any known technology. Scientists are still stunned by how the image appeared. It is not painted. Tests show no pigments, no brush marks, and no sign of an artist at work. Only the top fibers of the cloth are changed. They are dried and slightly altered, not covered with anything. In 1978, over 30 scientists in the Shroud of Turin research project ran detailed tests, from infrared scans to chemical checks. They concluded the image came from an unknown process. For experts who expected clear answers, admitting they didn't know was surprising. Decades later, artificial intelligence gave the shroud a fresh look. The AI confirmed what scientists had long suspected and revealed a shocking twist. Only the very top threads were altered, perfectly tracing the shape of a human body. No paint, no pigment. Nothing had touched it. It was as if a sudden burst of energy left the figure behind without making any contact. Some guessed radiation might explain it, but the AI showed that creating the image would need energy far stronger than the sun or anything we know. But somehow, the cloth remained completely intact, showing no signs of damage. Research from over 100 years ago, combined with today's cutting-edge technology, points to the same conclusion. The shroud's image cannot be explained. It remains a mystery that challenges science, tests faith, and captivates anyone who dares to study it closely. This supports what researchers call the radiation hypothesis. A sudden release of energy, possibly ultraviolet light or particle radiation, could have caused the surface discoloration. But the AI added a new detail. The energy required would have had to be instantaneous, perfectly aimed, and incredibly precise. And still, the shroud shows no signs of scorching, melting, or fiber breakdown. It's as if a controlled flash of energy created the image and left no trace, except the imprint itself. The facial reconstruction captured everyone's attention worldwide. People were amazed at how closely the AI-generated face matched early Christian art. But for scientists, the shock lay in the method. The AI did not invent the face. It extracted it from the cloth's encoded data. This means the image was not just symbolic. It was informational. The shroud held enough detail to reconstruct a human face with precision. The AI also confirmed the image's topography. Darker areas mark where the cloth lay close to the body, while lighter areas show where it hung farther away. The image is not flat. It is three-dimensional, almost like a depth map or biometric scan. Neither medieval nor modern forgers could have produced this level of precision. The shroud behaves like a depth sensor, recording spatial relationships that require advanced imaging, and yet it was formed on linen centuries ago. Scientists are both amazed and unsettled. Some called this the most advanced forensic study ever done on the shroud. Others caution that, while the AI reveals incredible detail, it still does not explain how the image was made. The mystery that remains. Some mysteries are never meant to be solved, and the Shroud of Turin may be one of them. For more than 800 years, this unassuming piece of cloth has held its secrets close, leaving scientists, historians, and believers alike baffled. People have studied it, prayed before it, and built countless theories to explain it. But the more we examine it, the more it resists understanding. The shroud raises questions about history, faith, and science that may never be fully answered, a silent reminder that some truths are meant to remain hidden. Technology has brought us closer than ever to understanding the shroud, yet it has also deepened the mystery. Even with high-resolution scans, ultraviolet imaging, and artificial intelligence, the cloth continues to defy explanation. Some patterns suggest a sudden burst of energy formed the image, something far beyond human skill. Each discovery seems to raise more questions than it answers, showing that knowledge alone cannot fully explain it. Despite numerous studies, the shroud refuses to reveal its true age, offering clues that often contradict one another. It reminds us that this is a puzzle unlike any other relic, a secret it has refused to give away. Even partial answers from carbon dating or textile analysis only raise new questions. Some results suggest a medieval origin, while others hint it could be far older. In this way, the shroud exists in multiple worlds at once: a religious relic, a piece of history, a scientific mystery, and a work of art. Perhaps that is exactly how it was meant to be. The shroud wants us to imagine, to pause, and to be amazed by something we cannot fully explain. Mysteries like this are powerful because they spark curiosity, make us think, and remind us of forces larger than ourselves. The shroud does more than tell a story. It also links us to centuries of belief, doubt, and the human quest to understand the world. Sometimes the most important lesson is not uncovering the answer, but embracing the unknown and letting ourselves be moved by it. For now, the shroud remains as it always has: silent, mysterious, and compelling. It challenges science, tests faith, and sparks curiosity across generations. Who was the man in the cloth? Could it really be Jesus Christ? How did the image form? Was it a miracle, a human creation, or something beyond understanding? These questions may never be answered, and perhaps that is the point. Some mysteries are meant to endure, to make us reflect on the divine, to remind us that the world still holds secrets, and to show that sometimes not knowing can be the most profound truth of all. Now we are left with a cloth that should not exist, a face that should not be visible, and a mystery that grows deeper the more we study it. The Shroud of Turin is not just a puzzle, it is a riddle that refuses to be solved, challenging our beliefs, our faith, our technology, and everything we think we know. In the past, AI has uncovered mysteries that have lingered for generations, but the Shroud still holds its secret. Could future technology finally reveal its secrets? Or are some truths destined to remain hidden? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen.